Well, I am riding on an executive function high because I just returned 5 emails. Now, one of them was from October, but the point is, I returned 5 emails.
A win is a win.
A win is a win.
Yeah, I may or may not have a giant pile of stuff that needs to get done today because it's due by the end of today, and I've had like weeks to do it.
The last minute is just as good as any other minute, as long as you get it done.
Yeah.
If you don't get it done, then we have to have a coaching session. Not that coaching sessions are punishment. It's just you're married to a coach, so you can't avoid it.
Oh, I am aware.
You don't even have like voluntary coaching sessions. You have forced coaching sessions.
Well, not to mention the ones that, you're having, and I pass through on my way to the kitchen and hear a really good point and go, oh, that's good.
You stealing my material.
Well, shall we make a podcast?
Let's make a podcast.
Hello, and welcome into another episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult, a neurodiversity podcast. The show where potential went to die. I'm one of your hosts, Ellie Michaels. I use she, her.
I'm your other host, Jessica Michaels. I use she, they.
And today we're talking about the invisible steps of friendship. And why they're steps that we just always manage to trip and fall on. Like so many icy stairs.
Yes. And this episode was inspired by a video that came through on Instagram by an autistic creator, Morgan Foley, who is wonderful, and you should follow her on all of the things. She's a wonderful creator, and we are going to play the audio from her video right now.
I realized that one of the biggest barriers to making friends as an autistic person is that I don't partake in the unspoken steps towards friendship. Like assuming that you're close enough with someone that you should be checking in on them, or assuming that you are close enough with someone that you can just go over and sit with them for lunch rather than like needing an invite. Like just all the tiny little interactions that like lead you towards friendship. I can't read the situation well enough to make those assumptions and to do things without like the explicit invite or like an explicit conversation of we are friends. And in the situations where I have made assumptions and thought that I was friends with someone and like took initiative, turns out I read the situation completely wrong and like I was overstepping. It's frustrating because I feel like there's this massive barrier between being like an acquaintance with someone and like being close to them. And I can't like bridge that gap. I can be a really good acquaintance, and there are times where I've been like really good friends, but it's only because they just kind of adopted me. But I can't like gradually make that friendship myself because I don't know when I'm supposed to be initiating things or know when I'm supposed to give invites or check in on people. Like I don't know the steps of friendship because they're all unspoken and they're like assumed things. And I need it to be explicitly said to me.
So you first sent this to me, and you're like, "Oh, this should be a podcast topic. This is something that you've struggled with before." And then anytime we come up with like a friendship thing, you're like, "Babe, you're better at friends stuff. What do you do about this?" And my answer is we're talking about the escalation of the steps of friend, where like you go from acquaintance, or you go from stranger to acquaintance to friend to good friend to whatever. And the way I've always just dealt with this is just be way too forward and way too friendly and just assume that immediately we are friends. And that does not work a lot. But when it does, then you're like, oh, okay, no, I've got a solid friend now. Like, the
Probably a friend for life at that point.
yeah, no, It works much better in, smaller circles like, queer and trans spaces, where it's like, there's 100 people in the city that I can get along with on this level. You're good enough.
Well, that's essentially how you and I got together. Is,
Hmm.
you know, when we got together, that was immediately, I think, the thing that both of us recognized was, oh, this is somebody who I can be me with. I don't have to worry about
Hmm.
being too forward, too overwhelming, too cagey. There was no games about, the feelings we were having. It was just both of us are very effusive and just kind of did the, autistic info dump slash ADHD hyperfixation, which is, hi, I just met you. You are the only thing that I can think about, and you're wonderful, and I want to talk to you all the time, which for a lot of people would be totally overwhelming. But for us was like, cool, deal.
Yep.
Um, and so I think that goes back to your point, which is I'm just me all the time, and it's going
Uh,
to put off like 95, 97% of the people. But the ones that do respond are going to be ones that stick around. So it's kind of a we had a saying in sales called spray and pray, which is
hmm.
where you would just put out as many calls as you could with the idea that percentage wise somebody's going to call you back, and the more calls you make, the more calls you're going to get back. And I feel like that's sort of the same idea.
Yeah, it does require it. It's hard to do that, especially, given like rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and given that no one likes to be rejected or, told to leave. But you got to look at it as like the best examples I can come up with are doing stand up or being a pickup artist. Because if you've read Neil Strauss's book, The Game, he hangs out with a bunch of pickup artists for a few months and figures out, their methods and goes through it. And the main secret of their method is you just try it on with everybody. And you're going to get shot down, like we said, 95% of the time. But same with doing stand up. If you have a bad set, that's awful. But if you're doing, 6, 7 sets a week, one it's a missed pitch. Like, oh well, I got a strike. There will be another one coming along momentarily. And so it's at the same time the best and worst method to use as a neurodivergent person trying to make friends.
I think my problem historically has been very similar to what Morgan describes in the video is like just for example, the other day I was on the phone with a business acquaintance. She was a client, or she was a vendor representative at a company I worked for a few years ago. And I saw on Facebook that, or I saw on LinkedIn that she had moved to another job. So I sent her a text to just say, hey, I saw this on LinkedIn. Congratulations. And we set up a call for this week, and we talked, and she said, yeah, we've got to stay in touch, not just, for being on the friendship level, but on the professional level as well, in case we work together again in the future. And it really made me think, because I don't know that I would have characterized her as being on the friendship level. Now, I was very pleased, it made me happy. So it's not that I don't want her as a friend. It's just, as Morgan said, unless somebody explicitly states it, I assume that we are not. And it's not that, and it's hard for me to describe, because it's not like there's any
Animosity?
animosity. It's more like neutral. These people are neutral, right? These people are coworkers. And I only know her in a work context, so she's a work person.
Hmm.
It's only when somebody says friend that it's like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Hmm.
And it's nice. I have had other people at work also who will start like Slack messages with "Hi, friend." It's like, oh, and that is really, really nice. Now, the thing I don't know is, if do they mean friend? Are they just saying it is like a, something new to say in a greeting, other than hey. So, but people have done that. And there are a couple of coworkers that I still talk to. And there's one, her name's Tori. I love her. And I would consider her my friend. And I,
Hmm.
I, I think she would agree with that. And then I have another few colleagues. Like I have some people that I think I could call when I need something. And I guess that makes them friends. They could call
Hmm.
me and I would jump on whatever they needed. But I don't really know what makes a friend, I think, which is it's hard to even find steps to something when you don't even know what the definition of something is, really.
I would consider a friend to be somebody who's on the spectrum of emotional intimacy. It was something I saw recently that, like, I so often get hung up on, like, why doesn't the cashier want me to have a sincere answer to their question? And it's like, well, because they ask that question 300 times a day, and it's difficult and overly taxing to actually be emotionally invested with 300 people a day. And it's not that they don't care, it's that the level of detail and explicitness you go into needs to be toned down. So if you're
Hmm.
having a real bad day, you don't gotta lie and say, "Oh, I'm doing great." You just say something like, "I've been better," and then you move on. Because you don't want to add that emotional labor to this person that you don't know. And this person who is doing this as part of their job. You don't want to make their job harder. So you keep it surface level, you keep it vague. And then the level of detail and emotional interaction and intimacy increases as you know somebody. And I think a friend is somebody who, for lack of a better term, you can lean on. And it's somebody that you are willing to have lean on you. You know, a joy shared is doubled, but sorrow shared is halved. Um, so it's someone who trusts you, someone who likes you, and is invested in your emotional well being and physical well being, I'd say.
So a friend is someone who wouldn't mind if you answered truthfully when they asked, "How are you?"
Yes. And the amount of detail you can get into is kind of a sliding scale based on intimacy, personal preference, you know, situation. Are we seeing each other at the water cooler for 5 minutes, or are we sitting down for a couple of beers? You can sit down for a drink with somebody you barely know and chat about nothing. Or you can sit down for a drink with somebody that you've known for 10 years and you talk about deep, dark, intimate things.
Well, let's do the neurodivergent thing and look up the dictionary definition. So
Just made me do a spit
that
take.
that is the first official gifted kid messy adult spit take, and it's all mine, baby. Yes, yes, yes.
Got pumpkin spice up my nose.
The comedian in me just did a shot, but since I'm still me, it was a shot of Crystal Light. Or a shot of peppermint tea with almond milk.
No, you get the crystal light so that, the people who sent you the shot think that you're also drinking on stage, but you just kind of cut the profit with the bar.
So, the Oxford English Dictionary definition of friend is noun, a person whom one knows and with whom one has a bond of mutual affection, typically exclusive of sexual or family relations. The example is, she's a friend of mine. Similar would be companion, boon companion, bosom friend, best friend, and close friend. And the second definition is a verb, a member of the Religious Society of Friends, a Quaker. There's also an addition, informal. Friends would be a list of contacts associated with a social networking website, as in, I'm friended by 29 people who I have not friended back. And archaic is befriend someone.
Wow, Facebook affected the definition of friend.
I was wondering exactly that. If this definition of friends that has jumped into the Oxford English Dictionary, if that has made it more difficult, even for people who maybe aren't on the spectrum or aren't gifted or aren't ADHD or neurodivergent, if it's made it difficult for everyone. to determine truly what a friend is in different contexts because I'm connected to lots of people on like LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I don't know a good portion of them. I mean, and some of that comes from being, putting information out into the public. A lot of people, will follow me just to see the information that I put out. But there's no differentiation between them and other friends. They're just labeled as friends. So has that even muddied the waters even more?
I would have said yes in like 2006 when Facebook was the only thing going, but I think the language has evolved since then. So usually the term that I see would be mutuals, as in like someone that I follow who also follows me.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yeah, we're mutual friends.
Oh, I for some reason thought it meant like you and someone else were both connected to the same person on social media.
That's the meat space definition of a mutual friend,
What is meat
is
space?
like IRL, like in real life, like when we're in the same room together.
So the IRL, real life
So
definition of
I I know Jim and Maggie knows Jim. So me and Maggie are mutual friends of Jim.
right. That's how I pictured it,
Yes.
but it has
But in an
changed.
online sense, if they follow me and I follow them, and maybe it is also that we both follow somebody else, but it's someone that you interact with on the regular and you both have a connection to the other, is always how I saw that.
Okay, so one of you isn't following the other one and the other one isn't following back. You're both following each other. Would
Yes.
be mutual. Okay,
Yes.
got it. Can you be mutuals if you both follow each other but you don't speak regularly?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the concurrent connection that is the most
Yes.
important part of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's two-way. Because otherwise, if they just follow you, they're one of your followers. If you follow them, I guess they're somebody you follow? I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like my language evolved up until like Twitter was good for a hot minute, and then it just stopped there, and society has
Well,
gone on without me, and I am fine with it.
clearly I stopped at mutuals. At definition A of mutuals. I stopped with Snapchat. That's when I went, no,
Hmm.
I'm done. I'm done. And honestly, that's stuck. I tried to move off of Twitter to Threads, and that hasn't really taken. I have downloaded Blue Sky, haven't joined it, and I recently got back on Facebook because I needed to get back on Facebook, and I'm not super pleased, but Snapchat is where I stopped. So, clearly I need some refreshers. But I do think that it does highlight, even in these ostensibly commonly understood vocabulary of society, in current parlance, friend and mutuals, which is a part of friend, it has some debate, has some different type of meaning. I think my challenge with knowing what is a friend is like, who has a bond of mutual affection. Well, what does that look like? I can have affection for many people and not talk to them. I would say, honestly, most of the people in my life I have great affection for and don't talk to them. I have people who I could run into, like, for example, some of the people back where we used to live. We moved about 11 years ago, 10 years ago,
Hmm.
and there are people that I haven't talked to since we left that I of course have affection for because they're wonderful people and we had, good experiences together. And if I saw them again, we would have a great conversation, or if they texted me for some reason or if they reach out, we'd have a good conversation. But I haven't talked to them in 10 or 11 years. Are they my friends? Assuming they remember me. So they would have to remember me and have mutual affection. They would have to have affection for me. But assuming they do,
I think we're getting a little too technical. Well, here's the tricky part where, see, yeah, no, I think that's one of the unique neurodivergent kind of friendships where I care about you, you have a place in my heart. I just don't have anything to say to you for 9 or 10 months at a time.
Hmm.
And when I do see you, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is fine. I picked it right back up. Because interestingly, as much as rejection sensitivity dysphoria does tend to kick us in the teeth, it also sometimes doesn't. Like, oh, this person hasn't talked to me in 6 months. They must hate me. Not really. This person just hasn't had anything to say for 6 months. I'll talk to him
Well,
again eventually, right?
I think one of the, she mentioned in the video, at what level of friends or what level of relationship do you check in on each other? Like,
Hmm.
that's difficult. If I have gotten somebody's number through, work or something, I wouldn't just check in on them. I might, if they hadn't been at work for a while, I might check in on them, but I'm not going to do that, regularly. But if you, if you meet people, I really only meet people in a work setting, honestly. That's where most of my relationships come from. So when you're outside of that context and you meet somebody, when are you at check-in level? That's kind of hard to discern because I have definitely, like she said, misjudged and thought that I was friends with someone and from their perspective, bombarded them with memes or, reach outs or whatever. Sorry, that's work jargon. Reach outs. And so I have certainly misjudged that. But then I think I have other people that probably I could still have a relationship with, but neither one of us nurtured it really, with those check-ins. Should I have started, those check-ins or something, would that have made a difference? But I think one of the things that I experience, and I know that this has happened to a lot of my clients, is you make this assumption in your mind that if they wanted to talk to me, if they wanted to spend time with me, they would. And if I reach out, I'm a burden. I'm not, if they desired to spend time with me, they would make that happen, but I can't ask for it or do something because it would be bothering them.
So here's where we get into my social volleyball theory. Me and the person that I know are standing on opposite ends of the volleyball net. I don't know if we're actually playing or if we're just standing here because this is where we happen to stand. So I will lob an easy one towards them, one meme, or hey, I saw this thing today that made me think of you, or hey, how you doing? And then if you get that volleyball hit back at you, we might be playing. If you get nothing, we're not playing. If you get, multiple things back, or then they reach out in a similar matter, okay, then we're playing. But if you lob an easy one at them and it just hits the gym floor next to them and they don't flinch, then we're not, and that's fine. And, you do that once or twice, maybe 3 times, spread out by a week or two. And if you get nothing back, then okay, we're not playing. That's fine. I will hit a volleyball over at that person.
First of all, I have to say, I cannot believe you made a sports analogy.
Right?
I'm very proud of you.
I was wondering, badminton? Because, if you hit somebody on accident in the head with a volleyball, they're going to be mad. But if you accidentally hit somebody with a badminton
Fly.
thingy,
Fly.
yeah, fly.
I think.
But it was a birdie.
Birdie. It's a birdie. It's
Doesn't
a
it
birdie.
look
You're
like,
right.
okay. If you hit them with the thing, it's little and it's
I
not going
knew
to
it
piss
was
them
an
off.
animal. I knew it was an animal. Something has got to be a fly. There's got to be a fly somewhere in sports. I watch football. I know football. I know football well. Other than that, Olympics. Um,
I'm a queer nerd. No.
but you made the sports analogy, and I'm just glad, first of all, that actual friendships don't require me actually lobbing a volleyball over the net because we would be in real trouble. There was when we played volleyball in gym class once, and it was in 7th grade, and I still remember this because the ball came to me, and I actually hit it over the net, and
Hey!
everybody was equally shocked. All of our mouths just dropped. Nobody could believe it, least of all me. So I'm glad that isn't necessarily required. I think that's a good litmus test because I, for a while, being me, had, there's one person I'm thinking of who was a coworker, and we talked a lot. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about personal life and things. So I got the impression that we were maybe out of work friends.
Hmm.
And, we had a job where we ended up talking, it could be 24/7 because we could be working on something at any time of day. So after I stopped working for that place, I would continue to reach out to them and send them memes and whatnot. And I asked them at one point, because I sort of noticed they weren't sending anything back. And so I said, does this bother you, that I'm sending you things, or should I not be sending, reaching out to you? And she said, oh, no, it's great. I love it. And I always smile when I see them. So I continued to send things. But then again, I realized after a long time, I'm not getting anything back. And so I decided to stop and see if they noticed or if they said anything, and they didn't. So it's like, oh, okay. So even sometimes being upfront and honest and isn't always dependable because I always assume that people are telling me the truth back.
Hmm.
And that is definitely not always the case. So that can be really hard. Even when you are upfront with people, you don't know how to judge their response. So that's why I like what you said, which is, send a couple of those, little flags or, make those little overtures, but put a limit on it. You're not going to do
Hmm.
that forever. I think that's a good rule.
And I don't know if it's just our culture or if it's human nature in general, but very, very few people are willing to casually hurt you. And so when you say, hey, are we friends? They're not going to say no because that's hurtful and that's over the top. The act of saying it is an aggressive act, but the act of just not replying to your messages is passive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you base your assumptions on how the person interacts with you rather than what they say to you, you're going to get better data because your data isn't being filtered by politeness.
How do you know what type of information you should share with a friend? Because I know that there are differences between this is a friend that I meet for coffee every now and again, and we chit chat about life and work and whatnot. And, there are friends that you would tell if you went to the doctor and got a scary test result, or if you were having trouble in your marriage. But those are not necessarily the same thing. I think me and many other neurodivergent folks have a tendency to overshare, which is
Hmm.
at any point I'm engaging with somebody and I will tell you everything.
Hmm.
When do you know who you can do that with?
So again, you go by reaction. I'm also a big oversharer, but the difference is when you overshare with somebody who didn't want you to do that, they're not going to investigate. They're probably going to shut down or try to limit the conversation. So, if you say to somebody, oh, I'm feeling really anxious today, I got a weird test result back and I'm supposed to hear from my doctor today. And then if they go, oh gosh, what is it? Or like, are you okay telling me what it is or whatever? Then that's somebody who wants to know more and wants to engage on this level. But if you just get back oh, that sucks, they don't want to engage more. And again, these are generalities. These are not, we are not medical professionals.
Right.
But it really just does seem to be how much you get back. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I'm hitting a volleyball to you and I hit you a personal one and I get a personal one back, I get an engagement on that level, then yes, we are that kind of friend. Or if it's overshare, then it's overshare and you clock that and that's the limit that you put there. So like,
Well,
I can talk to you about test subjects, I can talk to a handful of my friends about test results, but I'm not going to talk to any of my clients about anything in that particular, you know? Um, might be like, oh, hey, I'm going to be late for that meeting today. I got a medical thing. And if they go, okay, no problem, then that's as far as we're going to talk about that. But if they go, oh, I hope everything's okay, then that's a step up. Or if they go, you know, oh, is this because of whatever thing from the past, then that's another step up.
One of the questions that she asks, and I want to make sure we circle back to work friends. I think that's an important thing. So, but I want to say this first. One of the things that she raises in her video is, how do you know if you're go sit with them at lunch? Like they're in the lunchroom, you're walking in. How do you know if it's okay to go ahead and sit by them? When do you know that you're that level of friends?
One way that's not super helpful for a lot of neurodivergent people is you have to catch their eye. So kind of like how you don't snap to get the attention of the waiter, you just kind of look at them and eventually they'll catch your eye and you just make like a little nod motion or whatever. So as you're walking with your tray, if you can catch their eye and then, see how they react, if they, smile, or if they, kind of give you a little wave, or if they, then you're probably okay to sit with it. But if they're completely flat, or if they, look away real quick, they probably don't want you to sit down. And that might not be because they don't like you. It might just be that they're preoccupied and they have something else on their mind.
Yeah, I might ask, like, is this seat open or are you working on something or thinking about something and, want time to yourself? That's just me. I think if you're somebody who wants to make friends or wants to meet people, kind of a good rule of thumb is go to the spaces where people like you or people that, where you have a shared interest, go where you're interested in and where there are other people who like that thing. So we met doing stand-up comedy. I met a lot of friends doing stand-up comedy. You can meet people in continue the sports thing, a recreational sports, league, or a meetup, a walk in the park meetup. There are a lot of IRL in real life meetups that you can do, but online spaces are great, Discords or Facebook groups or things like that. Those are spaces where you can find people who have a common interest, so that at least you have a starting point. You at least know you have one thing. And, if you don't get friends from it, at least you're engaging with something that you're interested in. But there are a lot of people now, I think, who have relationships with people that are significant friendships that they've never met in real life. It used to be funny. You'd see in the news somebody say, oh, somebody got married and the first time they met their best man was the day of the wedding because they'd only played video games together. And those kinds of things, I still love seeing those stories, but those aren't
the best.
Yeah, those aren't a surprise anymore because there's lots of times you connect with people. My friend Tori, I've never met Tori in real life. I just realized that because we work together
Really?
virtually. Yeah, and we stay talking to each other and we've never spent time together in person. I have no idea how tall she is. I should ask her. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she knows that I'm that short. That's usually the first thing people say when they meet me is, I didn't know you were so short. Yes. 5'1", everybody. I think with work friends,
General Grievous, you're shorter than I thought you'd be.
with a lot of us, work might be, especially when you're neurodivergent, if you have the spoons or if you have the ability to hold a job, which is not everybody. If you are able to do that, there is a good chance you are not able to do much else. And so when you're not able to do much else, then the only time you're meeting people is work. And that really adds another dimension because I have certainly been in positions, like I said, at work where there's people that I interact with. I interact with them every day, but then my employment stops and I never talk to those people again for the rest of my life. And these are people who I may have shared everything, remarkable things and really deep details of life. And in a lot of cases, they've shared those back. Sometimes they haven't. And I think, I've probably overstepped and overshared. So even judging in a work context, what do I say to who? And what role do these people play when it comes to friendship? That's tricky. And there are people who say nobody at work that you meet ever is a friend. You should never have friends from work. And I think that is a little I think that's a little far. I think that's kind of a stretch. I do think most neurodivergents who I coach, we will often have a conversation about what to share with whom at work because
Mm-hmm.
we tend to overshare. We tend to say exactly what's on our mind. And that just isn't something that often works in the workplace. So I think there are people that you can find at work that you could maintain a friendship with outside of work or post, that employment. But how do you make that transition? How do you decide who? That's challenging because if you are in a situation where maybe you make that volleyball, uh, what are they doing in volleyball? I know they like.
I was just gonna go with overture.
So if you make that overture and you get a rejection, it's like, well, now I've got to see that person every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. I mean, when you talk about RSD, that's tough. It's one thing when it's somebody that you're never going to see again, but when it's somebody that, you have a report due on Tuesday, that you got to work on with, like ugh, that's really, really scary. If you were to answer Morgan or we were to answer Morgan, there are a couple of things that we could recommend. One of them is, like you said, make those little overtures.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure I wouldn't start with the biggest first. I wouldn't buy somebody a house first. I might
Mm-hmm.
send them a meme first or ask, hey, I'm going to this event, can I meet you there? Something. So something smaller, but do that a limited number of times,
Mm-hmm.
maybe between 1 and 3, and see what you get back. And if it's nothing, then leave it alone in terms of friendship. But you
Mm-hmm.
can start to see kind of what you get back. So I think those breadcrumbs is really a good idea. I think knowing that being direct doesn't always work. If you end up with somebody neurodivergent, that might work great,
Mm-hmm.
like you and I, but like this person from my past, being direct doesn't necessarily work because you can't always trust what you get back. They may be just trying to save face or not wanting to say the difficult or hard things. So going by somebody's actions can be more valuable than going off of their words. If you want to make some friends, a good way to start is going somewhere or doing something that you would enjoy anyway. So going to a place or in real life or online where people gather, that is something that you're interested in. That is a really good step. And worst comes to worst, you get to have fun anyway because it's something that you're interested in. And I think those are good tips. Good tips. Is there anything else? Oh, and we also learned that there are different levels of friend, and sometimes you kind of have to feel it out. Like you said, toss something out there and see what you get back or see what they say to you and how they are to you. And if you feel like responding in kind, then great. That's a friendship thing. If you don't, if your reaction is, then maybe, the friend, you're not ready to take the friendship, further, or, you want to keep the friendship level a little bit lower, and that's totally fine. So there are different levels of friendships, even within what we would call friends. But you need all kinds of people in your life. And so, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have different levels of friendship. That's totally fine. Anything
Mm-hmm.
else?
Two quick things. Rejection sensitivity sucks, and no one likes getting rejected. But try to remember that if you are being rejected as a potential friend for someone, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with you or that they don't like you. They just might not have room in their heart and their mind for more friends. I can have like 5 friends at a time, and that's really about it. So it's hard to just say, well, just don't take it so personally. But just remember that it's not necessarily a judgment about you. They've just already got their party members filled out.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
if we're doing, can I sit with this person at lunch? When you go to sit down, say, hey, do you mind if I sit here? They're almost certainly going to say, oh, please go ahead and sit. And if you're not sure if you're friends, get there early and then sit down before they get there and see if they come and sit with you. That's a good way to test their actual actions rather than just the words, which are oftentimes shrouded in politeness.
Or see if they repeat it. If you sat next to them one day, see if the next time you see them, if they wave you or something. It's one of those
Hmm.
things where we can't write a checklist. Although you have no idea how much I wish we could. So you sort of have to take some chances, which is hard. But that is the way that we make connections because that, just like, Morgan said, there's probably other people who over that you miss because maybe they didn't want to take chances. But if one of you had, then you could be great friends and you just don't know. So sometimes you have to be the person who reaches out.
Hmm. Yeah, and really just gauge your engagement versus their engagement. There's an equation at least we can go with. Well, I think that'll just about wrap it up for this episode of Gifted Kid, Messy Adult. Jess, where can people find out more about you?
People can find me at coachjessicamichaels.com, and you can find out more about neurodiversity coaching and if that might be something that would help you.
And if you like our show, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And for any and other information, please email us your questions, comments, or just outright praise to giftedkidmessyadult@gmail.com. So until next time, take care of each other out there.